Deshaun Watson's now a member of the Cleveland Browns, and the Browns are going to look to trade Baker Mayfield. Let me start with this. Baker Mayfield's market is really small. So just go team by team in the AFC and NFC. I'd make the argument the only place Baker Mayfield's a viable option is Seattle. Tough division, don't have a starter, fairly desperate 70-year-old coach that wants to win now. He's not going to go to New Orleans. They wanted to go big game hunting with Deshaun and missed out. He's not going to Atlanta. Matt Ryan may get an extension. He's got 1 year left and he's too expensive. He's not going to Carolina. They're already paying $18 million for Sam Darnold. The Jets are staying with their guy. The Giants are staying with their guy. Washington got their guy. Philly's staying with their guy. Look around the National Football League. It seems to me the spot is Seattle. I don't think he's worth probably more than a 6th-round pick, maybe a 5th. Remember, he's only got 1 year left on a contract, and he's expensive at $18 million. What are you going to give up for Baker Mayfield? There's no guarantee you get him for 2 years. And I'm not so sure Seattle's not going to draft a quarterback, Malik Willis, out of Liberty with their first pick. So there's not much of a market. Cleveland's not going to get much. As far as Deshaun Watson, listen, he's got a lot of detractors. He's better than Baker Mayfield. The Browns today are better than they were a year ago. Here's the issue with Deshaun Watson. It's a super expensive contract. So at some point, not this year, in the next 3 to 4 years, you have to pay the piper on this stuff. You're going to have to probably move off a couple of expensive players. So I've said this with Dak, and I'll say it with Aaron Rodgers. You can kick this shit down the road, but when you pay Deshaun Watson to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and in my opinion, he's not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's somewhere between 8 and 12. But we haven't seen him play much, and we haven't seen him play well mostly in the last 2 years. So I don't like the contract. I've generally been able to separate art from artist. I watch movies. I listen to music with artists or actors I don't like and have done bad things. If it significantly bothers you, I got your back on that. I totally understand it. From a football perspective, I thought they paid a little bit too much for him. He also may serve a fairly long suspension in year 1. So just look at the division. The Bengals have upgraded their offensive line. The Steelers have upgraded their offensive line and at quarterback. Baltimore, Lamar's healthy. They've upgraded their roster. There's a real chance Deshaun Watson doesn't play in September. So if you're a Browns fan, this is a long-term investment. Don't get your hopes too high for this year. There's going to be a lot of noise, a lot of pushback, a lot of controversy, a lot of ugliness. He may not play in September and early October. There's a lot of unknowns with Deshaun Watson. And if you are deeply bothered by him playing in the NFL, I get it. You know, my wife and I talk about this all the time. There are certain artists she just refuses to listen to. There are actors that she won't support. And I'm like, I get it. I totally support it. Having been a sportscaster my entire adult life, you know, if I turn the television off every time an athlete did something that I find detestable, you know, there'd be moments where I wouldn't be able to talk about certain topics I'm supposed to talk about. But I get it. The allegations are grotesque. I've got a daughter. I've got a wife. I've got a sister. They're detestable. And I would just say, temper your enthusiasm as a Brown fan for a year. We have not seen Deshaun Watson play in a long time. He may not play early. That's a big contract to live up to. And that division today, Baltimore, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh, are all better this morning than they were at the end of the season. They've all had excellent. The Steelers and the Bengals have had excellent free agent moves. Matt Stafford signed a contract extension. No big press conference, no drama, no holdout. You would not have known about it if not for the Rams Twitter account. You know, years and years ago, I said this and got some pushback. I said, how do we know that Stafford's not a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers? Matt Stafford was a better high school quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. Not close. He was the number 1 high school quarterback in the country. Aaron Rodgers went to a junior college. He was a much better college quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. Stafford picked number one. First couple of years as a starter in the NFL, he was better than Aaron Rodgers' first couple of years. Aaron Rodgers didn't start until year 4. Matt Stafford, first 3 years, went to the playoffs once. So we know that Stafford, high school, college, first 3 to 4 years in the pros, was a better football player than Aaron Rodgers. Then he simply couldn't overcome the nonsense of the Detroit Lions. Finally this year, he gets a legitimate squad, good management, excellent coach. Wins a Super Bowl. By the way, with Jim Caldwell, 4 years, winning record in 3 of them. Matt Stafford, between his arm talent, between his emotional discipline, next 5 years, what if he wins another Super Bowl or 2? Who's going to be better? We also know that Stafford has more come-from-behind wins than Aaron Rodgers. Already come-from-behind wins. Had several with the Rams, a great team, many with the Lions, a bad team. We also know he was the highest-rated fourth-quarter quarterback in the NFL, 14 TDs, no picks, highest second-half passer rating. Sometimes this is why I hold back on criticizing people with big, strong opinions in sports. If you'd have said 5 years ago, Stafford's better than Aaron Rodgers, people would have said that's ludicrous. What if they repeat? What if Aaron doesn't win the division this year, which I'll say this second, I would take Minnesota over the Packers to win that division now that Kirk Cousins has an offensive coach. But things that sound ridiculous, if you let them breathe, aren't necessarily ridiculous. It's not a hot take. Matt Stafford this weekend signs a contract extension, $40 million a year. If not for the Rams Twitter, you would not have known about it. Jesus, Aaron Rodgers' contract extension was a circus, a self-promoting circus. One of the most shocking moves, or perhaps the most shocking move of the free agent period, was Davante Adams bailing on the Packers and Aaron Rodgers. Listen, in the end, I don't have a problem with what the Raiders paid Davante Adams. Because they have an elite quarterback who they're going to have to make a big decision on. They have a top 5 running back, a top 2 tight end, and maybe in Hunter Renfrow, the best slot receiver in the league. They would not be going after Davante Adams unless it was an area of need. They need a number 1. And by landing it in their division, they feel like they have the ammunition to compete. I loved the move. And can we be honest about this? Giving up picks for star players, haven't the LA Rams sort of shown us the way? If you can get a Jalen Ramsey or a Matt Stafford, go get it. It's better than an interior defensive lineman from South Carolina who's 22 years old. You're crossing your fingers. You don't know if he can play. So I got no problem for Davante Adams in the AFC West with an elite quarterback. We're not talking about unknowns here. We know the Raiders in the draft now can go after and help the right side of their offensive line. It's not bad on the left side, not great on the right. They also signed Chandler Jones to go with Max Crosby. It created clarity. By getting Davante Adams, it created clarity. Let's solve the right side of our offensive line in the draft. Let's solve our secondary. Everything else, they're good. I'll say this. I talked to a general manager over the weekend. He said, forget a number 1 receiver. He said, the Packers don't have a number 2 receiver. He goes, I'm not sure they have a number 3 receiver. And how many years can they get out of Mercedes Lewis? Green Bay right now doesn't have the weapons. And I hear this, well, Aaron Rodgers, 7-0 without Davante Adams. Folks, it's one thing to miss Davante Adams for a week or two or a game or two. Going into a season without Davante Adams or a number 2 receiver is different. My wife can be gone for a weekend. The house is fine. If she left for 17 weeks, the place would burn to the ground. It's much different preparing against the Packers knowing they don't have a 1. Knowing you can put intense pressure on Aaron Rodgers and he doesn't have his back shoulder partner. Then missing him for a game. Okay, this is a whole different ball game now. Remember, Green Bay again is going to have a first-place schedule. You can go look at who the Packers play. The games are not in order yet. Go look at their schedule. It's, again, a rough one for Green Bay. I thought it was a staggering loss in a league that is increasingly about quarterbacks, their weapons, and pass rushes. They don't have an elite pass rush, and they may now, this morning, I'm not even sure this is arguable, Green Bay has the worst wide receiving core in the league this morning. I don't think it's arguable. You tell me, who's worse? They don't have a 1, they don't have a 2, and as an executive told me, he goes, it's a bunch of 3 and 4s, and they may be all 4s. Now I want to talk about the biggest disappointment in the tournament, John Calipari. My bad, John Calipari, but it does feel like a recruiting Ponzi scheme. He's always been a really good salesman and a self-promoter. But in the last 5 years, he has 4 number 1 recruiting classes and a number 2. And in that time, no Final Fours and 2 first-round exits. In fact, he hasn't made the Final Four in 7 years, and last year he was 9-16. When you watch Villanova, you can tell what they work on. They're really tough physically, really efficient offensively, very hard-nosed defensively. When you watch certain basketball teams, you can see they're coached. Calipari, to me, is the sketch artist that can't draw hair. He can recruit, but let me ask you, what part of his coaching is great? Seriously, what part of his coaching is great? It's pretty remarkable to me that he has fended off. It illustrates the power of personality. Kentucky has one of the harshest fan bases in the country. I mean, they live for this stuff. There's not a lot to do in Lexington. And the fact that they haven't been to the Final Four in 7 years, despite overwhelmingly have the best recruiting classes, the one and done for Calipari has just become a business proposition. It's clearly not effective. Villanova and Gonzaga have almost no one and dones. Last 7 years, they're better basketball programs. It's almost like he's now, as they say pro wrestlers do, they play to their gimmick. He's playing to his gimmick. The one and done is simply not that successful for him. It's hard to build chemistry. I'm not saying he's not a demanding coach. He's not easy on these players. But if you take one player out of his program, Anthony Davis, he's been there over a decade, and he's got as many first and second round exits as he does Final Fours. What is he great at? I say Jim Boeheim, you think of that matchup zone. I say Villanova Jay Wright, you think of their defense at all levels, guard, wing, bigs. I say Calipari, you think he's a great salesman. It's clearly not helping him on the floor. That's why I joke. I've been calling him Caliponzi. It's like a recruiting scheme. And he fends off the incredibly vocal and passionate Kentucky fans in the offseason by landing all these great players. You got to give me something on the other end. That loss to St. Peter's, and that's not a terrible team. That was an embarrassing loss. That's a really bad loss. And at some point, I think one of the more remarkable things about Calipari is his ability to stay employed. When he got hired, if you would have handed in the resume today as a coach and given that to Kentucky fans, you'd be like, yeah, he got fired after like year 8, year 9. I mean, there's no way they tolerate this. The only reason they do is the power of personality, his confidence, his ability to sell recruits and sell fans on the optimism. There's a better tomorrow. They are not living up to their recruiting rankings, and he's got to own it.